want it noted that the delayed start was due to P&Z meeting, not council.
Ill-prepared vice chair does not know how to.
This is the vice chair's first meeting.
In this.
He'll send his link to the, since they've more termed out.
Yeah, this is why
That's
I,
what
as mayor, I try to miss a few meetings so that the other people know what's going on, you know?
Okay.
Ready to act in my place.
Amber, did you get your puppy yet?
Yes.
She's smiling. It's a good sign.
Yeah, we're through the worst of it, I think.
How old is the puppy?
9 weeks.
9 weeks.
Oh, wow. The barking has subsided substantially. We're doing very good positive reinforcement training. But however, I don't want them to go out for another month because I'll have to do all the parvo shots.
Sure.
So, yeah, because we're concerned about the transition from crate to indoor potty training.
We're ready.
Oh,
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Planning and Zoning Work Meeting, July 11th, 2022. I'd like to call a meeting to order. 3:06 p.m.
Mayor, you probably ought to go ahead and mention.
Yep, and
Oh,
just,
yep,
just,
that's
just,
fine.
just for the record, this is no longer a joint P&Z meeting due to us not having enough members for quorum, but because it is a work meeting, we are here as active participants, given that no action will be taken. So we will be joining y'all's work meeting and appreciate y'all accommodating us. Call item 1.
I'd like to start the meeting with agenda item B1, discussion regarding citywide comprehensive plan update. Sharupa.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. And first of all, our sincere apologies for all the confusion with the logistics as well as the meeting link that wasn't working in the beginning. I wanted to make sure that everyone was available to participate, both virtually as well as in person. 3 of our consultants are trying to join via Zoom, but other than that, everyone else is in person. So the first item on your agenda for discussion within this joint meeting is the citywide comprehensive plan update. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction, introducing the consultant team as well, and then they will take over. So as we all know, Farmers Branch first comprehensive plan was adopted in 1989, and since then we have taken a different approach. We have had several area-based comprehensive plans or long-range plans adopted. The West Side Plan, which was the oldest, adopted in 2003, kind of this purple area shown on your map on the right side of the screen. Then the Central Area Plan that was adopted in 2012 mainly covers the central residential area and some of the other commercial areas, shaded in red. And then on the East Side Plan, which is our most latest comprehensive or long-range plan, was adopted in 2017, shown in this light blue shade on your map. However, as you can see with the years progressing, the development realities have changed on ground, especially with the West Side Plan being the oldest, more than a decade old. We are in the need of a comprehensive new plan, a new land use recommendations, new future vision and goals for the city. Recently, the City Council also adopted the I-35 Corridor Vision Study in 2021, the area shown in light green, creating a long-term goal and focus for this corridor, which also encompasses the 2 major gateways to the city of Farmers Branch. Adoption of this citywide comprehensive plan has been in discussion with council and senior staff for some time now. As recently as the latest strategic plan that was adopted for 2022 by city council members, it indicated the need for this citywide comprehensive plan under our strategy map that is shown on the right side of your screen under segment B5. It calls out for a need for development of a citywide comprehensive plan. We went through a consultant selection process last month, and we selected Stantec, who is our consultant guiding and spearheading this study for the community. Some of the key deliverables listed on this slide are community profile, public engagement plan, establish vision and goals for the city for the coming 20 years or more, future land use plan, housing diversity, mobility and complete street strategy, economic development and redevelopment strategy, and implementation strategies. Overall, it's a 15-month-long study schedule split into 3 phases. Right now, we are in the discovery and preliminary engagement phases. Then we'll see the visioning and plan development start pretty soon. And finally, the 3rd phase is plan review, refinement, and adoption. Today, for the joint meeting discussion, the main focus will be on the public engagement plan. As council directed us during the last strategic retreat as well as our joint meeting, public engagement and really involving the community at large for this study has been a main focus for this project. And we want to emphasize on that and talk about the public engagement plan prepared by the consultant. We also want to talk about the advisory committee structure for this study that will guide the process over this 15-month time period. We are going to talk about study website and overall the progress of the study so far. With that, I'll hand it over to Pierre Chaco and Erin Perdue with Stantec, and they will take it over from here. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirupa. And good afternoon, everyone, Mayor, council members, and plan commissioners. I'm Pierre Chaco. I'm a principal at Stantec and also planning and urban design leader for our Texas region. And with me, we have Erin Perdue, who's also the project manager for this project, who's really playing a lead role here. Before we get into the meat of the topics that Shirupa just talked about, I'll take a few minutes to give you a little overview of our approach. It's going to be a little repeat of some of the information that some of you have heard the last time when our contract was being considered, but I know for some of you it's going to be new information. Excuse me a second. There we go. So you see the agenda here today. I'm going to skip over it. I'll start with our team. So we've got a really good multidisciplinary team here. You've met myself and Erin. We had a few more members who were supposed to be here virtually, and I think we're still working on it, but you can expect to see Beth Elliott, who's playing a lead role in the engagement plan, as well as Jennifer Patterson from our sub-consultant Case Strategies, a local firm here. So we place a lot of emphasis on inclusive engagement, and Erin is going to tell you a lot more about it, but I'd like to hit a few highlights. Firstly, we pride ourselves on trying to craft our process to suit the unique needs of each process that we do. So we don't necessarily have a canned approach. We've tried to tailor it and spent some time with your staff on working on the engagement plan that you'll see today. We also try to provide a really wide range of opportunities. We learned some of this during COVID, provide both in-person as well as online engagement so that each person can engage in a way that suits them. We also place a lot of emphasis on trying to reach hard-to-reach populations, so that we try many different methods to try to do that. And then lastly, we believe in monitoring our engagement process throughout, so that we can see what's working, what's not working, and adjust accordingly. You saw this map that Shirupa talked about. It's going to be really important as we do this process that we are guided by, we develop a vision that can actually guide implementation. So we want to actually make sure that the whole process is geared towards action, so it doesn't sit on the shelf. And a big part of that also is not starting from scratch, but building on existing plans, some of the ones that Shirupa just talked about. There we go. We also realize that as Farmers Branch is getting ready for build-out, as you're running out of greenfield land to build on, part of this focus is going to be on looking at redevelopment and infill and dealing with some of the challenges associated with that. So one of the things we will be doing very consciously through this process is thinking about areas where redevelopment is likely or appropriate, and thinking about how to provide some direction for those areas in order to shape the kind of development that might happen there. We also understand that housing is going to be a very important focus. Again, as you approach build-out, as we look at existing housing conditions, look at existing housing trends, to kind of understand some of the demand and supply issues in Farmers Branch, and to take that into consideration in order to really try to prepare the ground for trying to allow for housing that may not be currently taking place that you need.
I have a question. Do you want questions as you go or wait?
I'm happy to serve at your pleasure, Mayor. We can do it either way.
This isn't my meeting.
Okay.
I'd love to ask a question about this slide. This is,
Sure.
this concept of middle housing, it's like drawing a line around Farmers Branch. And I'm just wondering, like one concept is you draw a line around Farmers Branch and then you assess, is there enough housing? Another one is there enough housing within a certain geographic area? So I guess which do you look at really?
That's a great question. When we look at housing, housing really functions at the regional level. So it's a regional housing market. So what we will be doing is looking at Farmers Branch within the context of the region, so we can understand how that works, how the dynamic works, and then essentially try to provide information that will help your decision makers figure out how to position Farmers Branch in order to best take advantage of the housing market.
So just moving forward, if we can just take notes and save our questions to the end, that way it gives the presenter enough time to go through the presentation and we circle back at the end with questions.
Very good. Another important focus here is going to be on mobility. This was one of the aspects that was called out in the RFP that we responded to. So we are gearing up to really understand how the transportation network within the city of Farmers Branch, all modes of transportation, how they will inform land use and how we can respond to them. And so we're going to take a layered approach where we look at the mobility network, look at it in conjunction with key destinations or amenities that are important to the community, as well as look at land use and placemaking opportunities and see how they can all fit together in some meaningful way. And then lastly, it is part of our scope to take a specific look at complete street opportunities. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's really about trying to look at the entirety of the street as essentially a resource that doesn't just serve the purpose of moving vehicles, but is really a public space that serves a variety of functions, serves multiple modes, and furthermore tries to provide for the mobility of all people. Part of the scope also provides, if the council so desires, to pursue doing some demonstration projects with regard to complete streets as well. Lastly, before I hand over to Erin, here you can see in pictorial form the process that we've laid out, the 18-month or the 15-month process that we've talked about, broken out in 3 phases. As you can see, there's some overlap between these phases, but I wanted to in particular highlight the so-called engagement pushes that you'll be hearing more about from Erin. We've focused them in 3 windows where we believe that we can really generate some energy and get some momentum going and really get some quality input during those periods by providing a variety of engagement forms in each of those windows. And then towards the end of the process, we will of course have the formal hearings, both at the Plan Commission as well as the Council. So with that, I'll hand over to Erin so she can talk about.
I think Kevin's gonna pull up the Zoom.
Pull up the Zoom link.
Very good.
Have a brief intermission.
In the meantime, we could answer questions if you like on the portion that we just talked about.
Anybody want to ask any questions as we're in a brief pause?
Check, check. Kara, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Would you mind really checking
Oh, we have to,
it? Allow them to, so when they're ready to talk, you just have to allow them to talk.
very good.
And you have to share the screen.
Yes, I do.
You have to share that. That should be fine.
All righty. So let me get the presentation back. And I will put it in presentation mode. So, hi everyone, I'm Erin. I am the project manager for this, so you'll be seeing a lot of me throughout this process. I was not down at the previous meeting that Pierre was, so it's nice to meet you in person. One of the more important things that we wanted to chat with you about today is the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. So before I get into some details about our public engagement plan, I want to talk about the Stakeholder Advisory Committee a bit and get a little feedback from you. If you'd prefer to have questions and discussion at the end, I'll just preview what my questions for you will be, and you can think about them. So the Stakeholder Advisory Committee is really essentially the steering committee for this project. We will be working with them very closely. They will guide staff and consultants on the process. They will review all of the draft material that we produce and give us input on engagement techniques. Are we good? Okay, we're good. The Stakeholder Advisory Committee really is meant to include representatives from a lot of different, what I like to call expert groups or folks that have expertise in particular areas. And we plan on having 5 meetings with this group over the course of the project. So not every month, but at key points throughout the process, we will be meeting with them. A combination of in-person meetings when we are here for those engagement pushes that you saw on the timeline, and then a couple of virtual meetings as well. I also want to point out before I go to the composition of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee that we also have a Technical Advisory Committee, which consists of some key department heads at the staff level here at the city. We also have a couple of DART representatives that we've identified for that TAC, if you will. And their role is going to be to help guide us and give us advice on current city policy, current city regulations, issues that they know about, and ensure that our work is realistic and that it is implementable. So that's how we're going to use that committee in conjunction with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. And so we're recommending composition of the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. We've worked on this in consultation with staff. What we're recommending is that 2 council members sit on the committee, 2 planning and zoning members. There would be 4 additional members from the community at large that are appointed by City Council. And then we would recommend that we have representatives from each of the 4 boards that are listed on the screen: Parks and Recreation, Arts and Culture, the Senior Advisory, and the Youth Advisory boards. We are hoping to
Hate it when TikTok goes wrong.
This is when you see people like break their phone.
So sorry.
Hey, we're flexible, right? Okay, so we're back. All right. And so one of the topics for this evening is that we would really like to get this advisory committee appointed at your next the council's next regular meeting on the 19th, because we would like to meet with this group when we come down for the first engagement push, which is the first week of August. And so one of the things that I will want to have a conversation with you about at the end of the presentation is, do you agree with the compensation or the composition? Do you have any suggestions? Not compensation, yeah. I don't think there is any. The composition and whether you have suggestions for others that we might want to include. All right, and on to the public engagement plan in general. We understand that this was a really big emphasis of what you're looking for this process, and we're really excited to be working with you on a variety of techniques to reach out to the public. And so I'm going to walk through our basic approach and the audiences that we're going to be looking at, and some of the techniques that we are proposing to use. First of all, the goals of our engagement effort. We really want to engage in a way that is meaningful and relevant. So we don't want to bring people together just because we're checking a box to do it. We want to have relevant dialogue. We want to make sure that we are creating opportunities so that people's contributions have an impact on the plan. One of the best ways that we know we have succeeded in a planning effort is to see that people's voices are represented in that plan. And so to that end, we've really prioritized inclusive representation, which I'll talk about in a little bit, providing access to information and opportunities in a variety of ways, and creating empowering experiences too. So not just presenting information and asking folks if they have questions, but really having meaningful dialogue and empowering them to make decisions and create ideas for the community. So we have several key audiences. If you looked at the public engagement plan in your packet, you saw a lot of information about these various audiences. I put them in groups for the sake of this presentation. There are a lot of different types of individuals that we want to make sure that we include in the process. Obviously, the general public is our biggest audience, but we're also looking for residents, property owners, business owners, developers, and folks young and old in the community. The way we reach individuals is that we go to venues where we know the people will be, and have engagement in places where people feel comfortable. Our online engagement techniques help here quite a bit, so I'll get into those shortly. And we know that when we're trying to reach individuals, we have to be flexible, and that means with locations, with times, with venues, so that we can make sure and reach as many people as possible. We're also looking to involve organizations that have expertise to contribute to the process. And the way that we reach organizations is typically through existing meetings or events that they already have going on. So again, if we go to them and go to an existing meeting or an event, that's how we can hear from organizations. I've got a couple of categories here. One of them is cultural organizations. And when we think about that, we're thinking of things like the Carrollton Farmers Branch Hispanic Chamber. There are a couple of other Hispanic organizations, so that we can get a wide variety of participation that way. When we talk about advocacy organizations, those are usually topic-based, so they could be arts-related, trails-related, environment-related. Those types of groups are great to talk to in topic-based focus groups. So those are some of the ways that we reach out to them. And then we have particular targeted populations also. These are folks that we have to work a little bit harder to make sure that we involve in this process. And I mentioned the Hispanic population is one in particular that's a high priority, that's typically underrepresented in processes like this. To help us reach those populations, we've included bilingual events and materials for the accessibility population, so folks that don't always come out to meetings and have trouble doing that. We need to make all of our events accessible and tie those into the city's ADA self-evaluation and transition plan that you've got. Employees are also one of those groups that often don't participate in planning efforts because they work here, but maybe they don't live here. And so we are proposing to actually have some listening sessions and meetings at your large employer so we can talk to employees as well and get their thoughts on the future of the community. And finally, transit users are important as well, and so we have included some coordination with DART to engage folks on transit, as well as doing announcements and ads there too, so we can try and get folks involved. Okay, so how do we do all of that? How do we reach all of those people? I hinted at some of these things already. We have a series of online engagement methods and some in-person engagement methods that are described in that plan that's in your packet. But I'll highlight a few of them for you. The first are several of our online techniques. We are working on a project website, and I will share a preview of that with you in just a couple of minutes. We also utilize a tool called Story Maps, which is an ArcGIS-based platform, if any of you do GIS, and so I see some nods, so that's good. It allows us to present material in a very visual and really telling a story method, and it's something that we can build on throughout the process. I'll show you an example of that later also. We have online surveys and quick polls. When I say quick polls, I mean, we just ask maybe a targeted question, one or two questions, something very quick, not a full-blown survey at various points. It helps keep folks interested and tuning in for more information. And of course, social media we utilize to get the word out and solicit comments as well. In person, well, we have a lot of ways that we engage folks in person. In all of these techniques, and hopefully you'll see that in some of our photos, we really try to keep all of our in-person engagement fun, accessible, and interactive. If it's a lot of folks like me standing up like I am right now talking at people, it's not a really compelling reason to come and participate in a planning process. We want to hear from them more than we want them to hear from us. So we work to try to remove barriers to folks attending these kinds of events, and that means providing activities for kids and ways to keep them occupied, providing food, providing bilingual facilitators, and we've got all of that in our plan and in our package. Our pop-up events, again, that's how we take our show on the road. I'm just going to move this little window over so you can see one of my favorite pictures here. In fact, I'm going to get rid of it. Yeah, this is my colleague doing a pop-up event at a grocery store. This is how you catch people as they're walking by with, again, just a very quick question, because obviously folks have got to get on with their day. But yeah, our attempts at actually going where the people are and making things quick and fun. Oops, wrong way. There we go. More in-person engagement opportunities that we like to do. There's a few pictures here of walk shops and bike shops. That allows us to talk to people about the public realm while we're out in the public realm. And we would go to certain neighborhoods, certain shopping areas, whatever, and actually take people on a walk and talk about things that they observe and opinions that they have. You can see in our pictures that it's not always, we even do this in the winter. I know these conditions don't show up here in Texas, but no matter the weather, we can handle it, and we will take folks out and do the engagement. It's a lot of fun. We might have to, we have used a popsicle cart in the past, so that might be something we consider here in this area when we go out. That's right, yep. The meeting in a box is something that we actually put an engagement meeting and all of the facilitator materials and instructions literally in a box. And it's designed for community groups or our community ambassadors, which I'll talk about in a second, to actually take to their home and host a few folks for dinner, or to a meeting that they've already got and do a little engagement on their own. It's a great way to have other people really take charge of the process and lead it rather than the planners. And finally, implementation workshop, that is what it sounds like. We meet folks that are going to be key at the city for implementing certain aspects of the plan and check in with them on making sure that our plan is actually implementable. If there are challenges, we identify those and we figure out approaches to overcoming those obstacles. So that implementation workshop would obviously come towards the end of the planning process. And now, something else that we want to get your feedback on at the end of this presentation is the community ambassador effort. We talked somewhat about this in the public engagement plan. What we are proposing is a pilot where we would invite a small group of stakeholders to participate at what we're calling an enhanced level. We want a little bit more out of them than just show up at a meeting. We want them to serve as ambassadors for the plan. Hopefully they would be members of typically hard-to-reach populations so they can tell folks what's going on and invite them to participate. We really see them as the champions of the comp plan process, and it creates a grassroots approach. So we are thinking that these ambassadors could be neighborhood leaders, they could be nonprofit leaders, they could be people who live in the community who are experts in fields that are related to planning and development. What we propose to do is early on, we would provide some training in communicating and engaging. So essentially, we're training the folks to go out and do their own work. Their job is going to be to spread awareness through their networks, friends, neighbors, colleagues. And primarily the way that they're going to engage folks is using that meeting in a box, where we're going to train them, we're going to show them how to do it, and they're going to go out and do it. Initially, we're proposing to just pilot this in the second phase of the plan. So if you remember the timeline, it's right in the middle when we're doing the meat of the planning activities. But we would like to start reaching out to folks early and get them invited. So we're going to need some help from you to try and identify some of these folks. So I want to have a little conversation about that. And again, yeah, the activities with this group would be focused in phase 2. So the phases, just to give you a little summary of where we're going with this. So we're in phase 1. When we do our first engagement push in August, that's going to include, right now we're working on the project website, again, establishing that ambassador program, engaging with the media and doing promotion. We've been working with staff to get a calendar of that. That first set of activities in August is really going to be focused on vision and goals. So very broad type questions. We have a large team coming from Stantec and our local partners, Case Strategies, and we're going to do a lot of events and meetings during about 2.5 days during that week. We also want to meet with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee and the TAC. So again, that's why there's some urgency to that question. In phase 2, where we are really developing the plan, we will be continually updating the website, doing our online surveys and quick polls. This is where we will really start rolling out story maps and engaging that way. We have a 3-day engagement push planned then, where again we will descend on Farmers Branch and do everything we can within that period. Our partners, Case Strategies, are local, so they will be able to do pop-up events and meetings outside of those engagement pushes. But that's where a critical mass of our activity will take place. We'll do some walk shops and bike shops then, focus groups, and again, meetings with the SAC and TAC. And then once we get to phase 3 is where we actually have some drafts for people to review. We want to get their reactions to things. This is really an iterative part of the process where we get feedback, we make changes, we get feedback. So again, we will have draft plan engagements over probably a 2.5-day period. We'll be doing some listening sessions, that implementation workshop I mentioned, building on the story maps that we've already got out there. And then finally, our presentations to P&Z and City Council for adoption. All right, so now I'm going to give you a preview of what the website will look like. Okay, so first of all, let's see. Here we go. Let's see if I can make this any bigger or zoom into it. I might not be able to, but you can see that this should look a little bit familiar. It's the city's website. The primary spot where we're going to host information about the comprehensive plan is inside the Planning and Zoning Department. I know that's too small to read. There's already a page dedicated to long-range plans. And so what we're going to do is make the comprehensive plan kind of the main thing on that page right now. What we've got here is we've designed a logo that is specific to the comprehensive plan. So this is a little bit different than the city logo. And the words underneath there, if you can read that, you've got really good eyesight. It says livable, inclusive, and vibrant. Also, what else you're seeing on the page here is there'll be a brief description of what's going on. We will have quick polls here, so that's the thing you're seeing with the little push pin, where we'll ask quick questions. In the middle here is where we will have a link to the story map, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. And we will also have information on what's going on, what events are happening, and where we're going from here. So this is just kind of a rough sketch of what the main website will look like. When we talk about story maps, this is one that we did for a community in Minnesota recently. And the entire comprehensive plan is presented in this way, where it's mobile friendly, you can scroll through it and see highlights of the plan. Things change. They're not all maps. Sometimes they're graphic information. Sometimes they're illustrations, photos. So this is how we have presented information. I'll show you one of the, when we talk about story maps, there are a lot of map layers that we will load at different spots during the process. If we want to ask questions, we can embed surveys in this as well. And so, this is the platform where we will present most of the information and we will be asking for online input through this. And that will be linked on the city's webpage here. And let's see, finally, let me get back here. Yeah, I think that's close to it. What we're going to be doing immediately is looking for appointments to the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, launching that website so that we can get the word out about our events in August. We are working on the community profile, which is essentially the inventory of all of your existing conditions and trends that are going to impact our planning process. So that will be wrapping up, and that'll be, one of the first things that we publish on the website. And then we've got our first engagement push, which is tentatively scheduled for August 3rd through 5th. So this is kind of where we're going immediately. I want to thank you for your attention, and I look forward to having a conversation a little bit more about the steering committee and your thoughts on the advisor program and any other questions Pierre and I can answer. I know my colleague, Beth Elliott, and we have a representative from K Strategies on the phone too, in case you have detailed questions about the engagement plan.
Thank you so much for that presentation.
Sure.
Very good.
I guess I'd like to open it up for anyone on the commission or council members to ask any questions.
My question is in reference to driving the viewership to your component of the webpage. Is there a strategy for handling that?
That's a really good question. I'll take a stab at it, and then if Beth is online, she can add to this. We are working very closely with the communications staff here at the city to make sure that we are publicizing anywhere and everywhere that we can. So we're looking at your weekly electronic newsletters, any kind of social media boosting. What we're doing on the consulting side is preparing those messages to go out and then working with your community, your communication staff to actually get the word out. Beth, is there anything that you would like to add?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, everybody, I'm Beth Elliott. I will see you in August. I think that's correct. I think what we're doing is really focusing on the avenues that people already use to get information about the city, and then enhancing that. I know that we're going to be working with case strategies over the next week to develop maybe more social media platforms where we could get more traffic to your general avenues or that people already use already. So what we want to try to do is boost what's already out there as good promotional opportunities.
And when you say social media platforms, what are you restricting? Are you restricting it to just specific Facebook, Instagram, or are you looking at Nextdoor, groups like that? Because those are like community specific.
I think initially we were looking at the social media channels that the city already has and whatever the city uses. I don't know if we have had a specific conversation about Nextdoor or being able to target specific neighborhoods that way, but.
I'll just add that,
I would.
Sorry, Beth.
go ahead, Beth.
I would just say that, you know, I'm up here in Minneapolis and we have a very strong Nextdoor presence, and maybe similar to you, there's a lot of people who are on Nextdoor, and I think that would be really good if we can tap into that. So we'll talk to the communications director about that.
I would add, I hope that our community ambassadors can kind of help us with that too, because they're gonna be
Yes.
folks from various neighborhoods, and they may be able to post things on Nextdoor or whatever, however they communicate with their constituent group. So I think that's gonna be a valuable resource for us.
I would ask, are you guys planning to, with some of these community outreach programs, incorporating into our existing city events like our Halloween in the Park? I know in August, really close to your first engagement push on, I think it's 13th, is our Denton Drive
Denton Drive Live,
Live. That's a really great way to, you know, you have a lot of our community kind of entrenched, you know, as long as it's not 107 and it gets canceled. You know, it's a great way to start engaging the community as a whole in this process. And as well as it ties into the social media aspects of pushing it, because it brings that added aspect of something that our community is already involved in and interested in. So I hope that that's part of that planning.
Yes, it absolutely is. We've gotten the calendar of events from staff. We're coordinating with case strategies for those events that happen, like Denton Drive Live, which is not when the rest of the team is here, but so that they can do pop-up events at those. We've also seen, is it Family Day at the Park? Yeah, which looks like a really good place that we would want to be also. So, yeah, we are looking at some of those.
Perfect.
Do we have a plan on how we're going to be moving forward with the selecting who's going to be on the stakeholder advisory committees? You know.
Councilmember, if I may answer that question, I think that's one of the goals of this discussion that Erin brought up is we will be looking for your direction in terms of, we only recommended the consultants and staff, we only recommended a composition of the group. However, we'll be looking towards you, council as a whole, on appointing these members of the community, as you know, who will be really good for this group, because they are going to be almost like the steering committee for guiding this process. So far we have a composition that would comprise of overall 12 members, and we thought that was a balanced group. we decidedly went with the 2 members of council because that way we don't have to worry about quorum every time and posting the agenda for SSC every time they meet. So that was a conscious choice where we recommended 2 members from council. And then we also decided 2 members from Planning and Zoning Commission. And the members appointed by City Council, those 4, we were thinking that the other 4 members of the council can recommend 1 member each from their district, from as a member of the resident or community that they would recommend to be part of the SSC. What we are really looking forward on the July 19th, we'll have it as agenda item. And if you all would please give us some recommendation to staff, hopefully by this Wednesday, if you can, or if not Thursday, and then we can have that as part of the agenda for July 19th, where council can formally appoint. And I know, Mayor, would you like to add something?
Yeah, my only thoughts would be add a 5th appointed by the city council, so every council member gets to add somebody, but also gives you an odd number in the event that there's a tie on a decision point. But the rest of it, in my opinion, looks good and provides a good mix of individuals from our community that are very involved to
Sure.
help steer this.
That would make it 13.
It's already done.
Fine. See? Real time.
I just want to follow up,
Yes.
if you don't mind, looking at the document earlier in the section, under section 5.0, there's another breakdown of the SAC, and it seems to be in conflict with what we have here. So just.
Yeah,
we need to organize-
the version that went in the packet was before we kind of rethought it and talked it through some more, so this is the
Okay,
latest.
this is the one you're
Correct.
going
Yes,
after,
yes,
not
yes.
what's listed in section 5.0 of the document.
That's correct.
Okay.
The website that's gonna be there, is it gonna punch out eventually as this grows and renderings and plans and things get developed that are kind of under this? Is that where citizens can go and say, okay, there's a complete streets plan now? Maybe it's not the actual detailed site plans, but the renderings that are approved?
Yes, so
Is that kind of how we're gonna do this? That's gonna be the comprehensive plan? way to get
Website.
To wherever it is?
yes, so our goal is, and Erin help me out here, our goal is to somehow or use every means possible, as we mentioned, through social media, through our city's usual publishing channels, to guide residents and businesses to that website. Because that's going to be the main repository of information. It's similar to, if you remember when we did the I-35 corridor vision study, we created the study website. Even for that zoning process we did for the entertainment overlay, we created that web page where all the information was being posted. If there was a survey, there would be a link there, and after the survey is done and we have or the consultants have synthesized the information, that information will also be housed there. However, once the study is adopted and complete, we'll probably pare it down where your main documents are gonna be there. It's not gonna be everything on that website anymore. It would more be archived.
Yeah, I guess I'm more thinking from a citizen, it's like looking like, hey, I've heard there's gonna be improvements to my block or improvements to my street, so I heard it was approved. Is that where they go to kind of see that as part of, because it was under the umbrella of the comprehensive plan? We decided to do this, so where can they see that? Like, okay, hey, this is gonna happen in the next 24 months, and it's gonna look like this, and it's gonna be great.
So that is, from our point of view, that is more of a down the road process, because this is more of a policy document, more of a long-range plan, where we'll come up with the study, working with residents, working with council members, working with SSC. The study will come up with recommendations and implementation strategies. However, if you note, when we did the I-35 corridor study, there was an implementation matrix which recommended creating a TIF, appointing a TIF board, and that's how we started allocating funding. Then it talked about target area 1 rezoning, which would be the second item on your agenda tonight. So that's how those projects gets rolled out. So it's not necessarily gonna be like, say, even if there was a complete streets policy adopted as part of the comprehensive plan, that will become a chapter of the comprehensive plan. But when the roadway projects become candidate projects and actually move forward to construction or reconstruction, that would be later down the road, maybe 5 years, 10 years, whenever funding is available, whenever actual plans are approved by council and the Public Works Department. So that's not gonna be.
But once it's approved, it'll be available for the public in whatever
Yes.
format it is.
Yes.
Of course, yes.
So is our goal to eventually be able to just from the website point of view, because I know that getting feedback from citizens, things get a little murky on our website as far as how to find things. And so I would hope that, once we get this moved through and we get this planned, that when we're talking about something as large as as our comprehensive plan, that would be something that we would find on the first page of our website, whether it's
Yes.
in,
Yes.
I mean, the first page is pretty large in and of itself. I would just hate for us to do all of this work and it be hidden under agendas with council or under P and Z.
You're absolutely right. So that was one, we already had 2 initial meetings with our communication directors and his team, and also our marketing team. So one of our direction to the consultant team has been that the person who is in charge of the website, we have given that person or that staff member editing rights to our Civic Plus platform on top. And one of the direction has been like, see on the homepage where we have this kind of jumping up and down
Yes.
buttons. That was one of the recommendation I had, is we need to add a button, like kind of in the main page for
Yeah.
comprehensive plan. And then if you click that button, it takes you to the comprehensive plan page. That way you have to, I struggle with that every day. Like you
Yes.
click on departments, if you're doing it on your phone, good luck
Yes.
trying to go through
Yes.
all that way
Yes.
down to find the comp plan page.
Yeah.
So we are doing everything that's possible to make it easy to find or easy
Perfect.
to navigate to.
Perfect.
I have a question about for the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. Can you explain the reasoning behind how you selected, under other board members, how you selected those specific committees?
Yeah, we looked at the whole list of the committees, and we wanted to try and focus on ones that were representative of either interests or populations that we particularly wanted to reach. So that's why we've got the seniors and the youth, and other boards that just have a more relevant scope that relates to the comprehensive plan, was sort of how we pared down the list.
Yeah, the only one that I may suggest to add on to there is the Sustainability Committee. It is a little bit kind of more overarching, similar to Parks and Rec and some of the other ones.
It was
Sure.
mentioned somewhere in here, sustainability. Is it not on-
I'm sorry?
I saw sustainability committee was mentioned in here somewhere, so we had it.
Is that on the technical side?
Huh?
Is that on
Yeah,
the
it was
technical side?
probably in the engagement plan, but we can certainly add it here too, so that it's
So that would give us
an even number,
an
14.
even number.
I mean, in reality, we don't expect that this group is gonna be voting on anything or making decisions like that, so I don't see it as a problem that we have an even number.
And just to.
Hey, Erin, Shruba, may I mention something too about
Please do.
boards and commissions and other components like that?
Yes, please do.
So, what we really try to do with every phase of engagement is get feedback at all levels of expertise from lay people who may not know much about how the bus system works to, technical people who might design the bus lines, right? And so the SAC is one way to really get some of that kind of expertise at the table altogether. Another way we're doing it that Erin had talked about is through these listening sessions while we're in town. And we're working with Shrupa right now to figure out various topics for each of the listening sessions that we're going to be doing. And that is a great way to bring more experts, more advocates, more of your partners to the table. And we expect to use that same group and same email list throughout each phase of engagement. So we have so many other opportunities too. So I just wanted to say that don't worry too much about getting the SAC just perfect, because we have so many other ways to supplement and build relationships with others as well.
Thanks, Beth.
So a potential different question.
Okay.
As it relates to the actual plan and what we're trying to accomplish, I appreciate the level of public engagement and input that we're looking to get from people that are not sitting at this table or who should also be sitting at this table. Unfortunately, they're not here today. But the overall plan, are we trying to get the public engagement to drive the outcome of this comprehensive plan, or are we looking at potentially the 5, 6, 7 plans that we already have in the city that need to be melded together to get rid of any overlap and everything else and identify gaps of where we need to find solutions and use the input to cover those gaps? Or what's the driving force here in terms of what's going to lead potentially the end result? And I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page of what that's actually going to look like in terms of, hey, we have 15 plans that
Right.
need to tell some cohesive story that points us towards the North Star and figure out what else needs to be added into that? Or are we looking for people to give us input to then spend a lot of time to figure out how that all works together? And I just want to hear that piece of it to understand how we're going to drive the point of that.
I can't pick one, I guess, because they're both, I would say both. We really want the public to drive the vision for what the community should be in the next 20, 30 years. But we definitely don't want to recreate the wheel in terms of all of the planning that has already been done in those, all of the ones on the map and the ones that aren't on the map. And we've already started reading and synthesizing all of those. We're looking at where there are gaps, if there are conflicts, things like that. And then we're also going to be looking at, as Sharupa mentioned, things on the ground have changed a lot in some of those, from some of those plans. So some of the things may not be relevant anymore, but the overall vision and the goals for where the community is going, we really hope that that is community driven, and we're going to use as much of what's already been done as we can and update things. Yeah, Pierre?
Yeah, and I'll just add that in many ways, the existing plans is really a starting point.
Yeah.
Right, it reflects your existing policy. And so I think we can use that as an excellent way to sort of reflect that off the community and see, is this still what you want, But that doesn't mean we have to stop right there. We want to be informed by new input, people who may not have been around when those plans were done.
Yeah.
And furthermore, a lot of the analysis that we'll be doing will be shedding light on new facts that may not have been known back then. And so it's sort of a mixing of all of that. And hopefully, this is an opportunity to refresh your plans and have a new vision.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah.
So what's our homework? I heard a deadline of Wednesday, so I just want to make sure I understand what it is that we're supposed to get to you by then.
I would recommend if the mayor wouldn't mind coordinating that effort or if you want all the council members to email myself and John or two of your recommendations for the ACC, one from your district and one from the board member. And also how you want to select the two members from council.
I think for us, it's come with your recommendations, and we'll share this with the individuals that aren't here for the meeting on the 19th, but the bottom two, who you personally would want to appoint, maybe a backup for members appointed by city council, come with board members, or a suggestion of, is it just the head of the Parks and Rec, Art and Culture, to just make it easy, hey, you run that group, come on down. But then as it relates to P&Z and city council, I think that's a conversation to have at the
On the
table.
19th.
But also, I don't know, should we let P&Z self-select their own two?
That's what I was gonna propose, that we can discuss it within our group to see who has interest.
I would rather,
Wondering if with our boards, if we want to do the same thing, instead of us appointing off of the board, let the board put forth, that may be an easier way of who's actually available to participate in those.
I'm worried about the timing on them all getting together to
Oh, yeah.
Like-
have
That's
those
true.
meetings to discuss that
Gotta
rather
lose that.
than, and you know what, if someone doesn't want to serve, maybe they can appoint a backup later, but this will be the starting point for that from the boards, just because some have already met this month, some haven't. How many special meetings do we need to call for them to make this quick decision?
Sure.
So, but I think for that should help streamline some of this. That way y'all can handle y'all's too. And we'll let y'all drive
Yeah,
that, and
and
then we'll drive the other ones.
Absolutely. And after this, we have our regular P&Z meeting, so we can have the discussion during our.
Just a couple of things. On the technical advisory committee, you might want to add like ERCOT or Encore in there, since their towers are such a big presence in our world. And then second, if somebody asks me, how is this being funded? I mean, how is your work being funded? Like, where was it funded? How much is it costing? Where can I point them, or how can I give them that information, or where does that information exist? How much this is
Actually,
costing?
when we selected, or when City Council appointed Stantec as the consulting committee to do this study, that was May 3rd council meeting. So that was part of that packet with the scope and services. That was one of the attachments, and it also talked about the budget, and how much funding was allocated to the study.
So pointing into minutes of a meeting, is that what I'm hearing?
Well,
Yeah.
the packet is available online too, so.
We approved that earlier this year, and so.
I'm just asking, so I mean, I know you approved it. I'm just asking, where can I, somebody wants to know where they
If you
go
look
to
under
look.
the agenda on the May 3rd packet.
May 3rd.
May 3rd packet, you'll see, it's one of the, I think it started in study session. It's listed on there. So you don't have to
We had
look
the
at minutes,
presentation
you can
downstairs.
actually look at the whole
Yes.
thing.
Okay.
Or you can look at the video and watch the video as
You
well.
can also look at the minutes of the meeting, the
That's
following
what I'm
meeting, will tell
wondering.
you what the answers were.
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
and if you want, I can email you a link to the
Yeah, no, I
packet
mean,
as well.
I just want to be able to pass on to other people who want to find it also.
I have one other question. So you're not looking for people to be ambassadors yet, that's gonna be at a later point, or?
Well, we're gonna start, working on who ambassadors are, so if you have idea, I mean, this isn't a formal appointment that needs to be made, but if you have ideas of people you think might wanna do it, I would say email those ideas to Sarupa as well.
Okay.
And one good thing would be, as Mayor pointed out, if you give us like 2 of your recommended community members from the board, as well as the members to be communicated at large from the community or from your district, if you give us 2 options, of course, one of them after your deliberation will be appointed to the SSC. The second option, or the second choice, at that time can represent or be part of the ambassador group. I wanted to clarify like a little difference between the SSC versus the ambassador program. Ambassador program is more of an informal. It was the idea that Stantec brought to us, and we really liked it because sometimes, even as a resident myself of a community, you don't have the times, you have your regular job, and you don't want to commit to a ongoing meeting schedule, right? Because there's SSC, there would still be some ongoing meetings you will be attending. There are some time commitments that you have to adjust with your family obligations, whereas the ambassador program is more flexible. We are looking for those community champions or leaders in, say, Spanish-speaking groups or other church groups, neighborhood groups, where they can do those marketing, if you will, or spread the word about the comp plan on their own time. We'll give them the tools. The consultants will work with them, kind of train them, educate them, and help them with the materials. But then we'll kind of let them loose, if you will, so that in their own time, in their own group, in a dinner meeting, they can just spread the word. So that, I wanted to make that distinction, that the time commitment and the difference between a more formal committee fashion versus a more informal ambassador program, if you will.
I see. And so are there any limitations on the number of ambassadors? And the only reason I ask is because I've got Hispanic community, Indian community, senior community, apartment community, so I'm already thinking of 4 different individuals. So I'm just kind of wondering how that would work.
Beth, you've turned on your camera, so I know you have thoughts on this.
So the reason we're doing it as a pilot, we'd like to do it as a pilot, is because it's a pretty innovative engagement tool, and there aren't a ton of really well-established best practices. So what we thought is, if we can do this at a very specific part of the project and with a pretty targeted list of ambassadors, and the reason I'm saying that is because we would love to be able to have a group manageable enough to train effectively. We certainly want to know that they care about these topics and are really connected in their communities. And the other thing that we're really trying to do is figure out how to compensate them for their time. And so that would be a limiting factor too. It is a best practice of ambassador programs to be able to pay them for their time, since so many people in your community get tapped for so many volunteer components. So I would say it is just finding that right balance of training the manageable number of people and really trying to figure out a way to pay them.
No, it wasn't.
We don't, the short answer is we don't have a specific number in mind like we did for the SAC. So we'll just see how many ideas come in and we'll see how many we can accommodate.
This is one of those parts of engagement is that we always want to do better than the time we did last time. And so when we were talking Sherpa and case strategies, we said this ambassador program is a best practice. It is somewhat of an untested best practice in comprehensive plans. So let's try to set a best practice with this. But we want to, again, make it so it's not too unwieldy. We want to be successful at it.
So I have a question, and now that you kind of talked on best practices, Shrupa, the mayor talked about the number of plans we've recently gone through, the 35 corridor study, the East Side Plan. Did you guys have like lessons learned, best practices from those plans that were recently that you guys communicated and shared with Stantec in order to make sure that we learned from what happened in the past? Maybe we didn't do something right, we wish we would have done that. That way it's incorporated into this new engagement.
Sure, and also we have to, and that's a very good question, we constantly try to remind ourselves this comprehensive plan is a much broader in scope versus what we did for the I-35 corridor vision study. And that's one of the reasons you are seeing a very different group of people recommended for the SSC. So we are not just looking into the I-35 corridor vision study or the 3 long-range plans. We are also looking at the Park and Recreation Master Plan. We are looking at the Trails Master Plan, or the consultants are. And it's gonna be a amalgamation of all those plans, looking at it in a comprehensive fashion. The lessons learned, for example, on our planning side would be when we did the I-35 corridor study, we just got the study kicked off and then COVID pandemic started. So all that engagement focus went virtual. We could not do any in-person participation. However, we talked to Stantec initially and told them that there were some really good ideas we had that we wanted to do, but we couldn't because of the pandemic, like going and meeting with major employers and their employees on their site within Farmers Branch, because those are hard to get people because they don't live in Farmers Branch, but they're still important. And how do you want to engage them? And also one of the ideas we had was to maybe do a pop-up event at the DART station, at our DART station, where regular commuters can come and see and learn about the study. So those things we have communicated, the lessons learned, but there will be more. And that's the goal of this technical advisory committee as well, because those are comprised of most of the department heads, not just planning. Because we want to hear from Mark Bentley, we want to hear from Shane, we want to hear from Michael Mashburn, we want to hear from Jeff Brady. So all of them will bring those kind of on-ground lessons learned experiences from being on the job as for so many years. That's how we foresee this study moving forward. Did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you, Shrupa.
Are we planning to invite our chambers, we have 2 chambers, to help participate? Maybe especially with our small businesses, that may be a way to kind of engage those small businesses that we may have trouble getting engaged otherwise, since they more than likely don't live here in the city.
Yes, so we talked about both MetroCrest and our chamber. And in some cases, and same with this SSC too, that it will be more as needed basis, because they might not be needed in every meeting.
Sure.
But there will be focused discussions where, say, one day we'll be discussing about small businesses or economic development items or infill projects that we need their feedback on. So those would be kind of geared conversation. Same with DART. We have 2 members of the DART who are part of the TSC, but I don't foresee them joining for every TSC meeting.
Sure.
And we'll take the advice about Encore. We'll include them, but they might not be part of all the meetings.
Okay, anybody have any other questions? All right, moving on to agenda item B2.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item B2 is to provide an update on I-35E corridor revision study implementation completed to date, including an overview of target area 1, rezoning, and discussed as needed.
Yes, hello. If you'll give me a second, I'm just going to share my screen. Kevin, am I able to share my screen?
Kira, I don't know whether you can, given that Kevin is controlling this
Yeah.
Zoom meeting, so
That's fine.
what I
If
was
you
gonna
could just start
suggest
the
is just let
presentation for
me.
me then, Shrupa, and if it's okay, I'll just let you know when to forward the slide.
Yes, yes, thank you.
Actually, Kira, you can go ahead and share.
Oh, okay. So Kevin says you can share.
Hello?
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, I can share my screen now, so I'll do that. So good afternoon to the commission and to planning and zoning members who are, to council members who are in attendance today. My name is Kira McCardle and I'm a contract planner with the planning department at Farmers Branch. So this is kind of great that we're getting to see these two presentations together because you guys were just talking about the comprehensive plan process, which is a process that's just starting. And the focus of this item is really to look at the I-35 corridor vision study, which was adopted by council about a year and a half ago. And we just want to bring it back to you guys to let you know how the implementation phase of the project is going. So it is a 20-year vision, and the focus of what we'll be talking about today is the implementation. But we have gotten what we feel is a pretty good start on the implementation of the study. It's a marathon, not a sprint, so there's a lot to do, and it takes a lot of work on staff's side and on council and P&Z's side to ensure that the vision for the study, just like any comprehensive plan or small area plan, is realized. So on February 2nd, as I said, council did adopt the I-35 corridor vision study, and I will read the vision for you now. So excuse me, I'm just going to read from the slide. So the I-35 corridor will act as the front door to Farmers Branch and a world-class place to live and do business in the Dallas-Fort Worth region. It offers space and access for a wide range of businesses looking to grow and expand, a range of housing and amenities for residents. Visually, the corridor is an attractive gateway that reflects the city's reputation for excellence. So there's a lot there, and there are a lot of pieces that were put together to help us get to that vision. So in your packet today, you did have the implementation strategy or implementation plan that was a part of the I-35 corridor vision study. So far, as staff at the staff level, I think we've been really happy with the form that the implementation plan has taken. It's a really project-based implementation plan. So it almost allows the city staff, when it's budget time or when we're making plans for projects to work on for the next year, really go through and look at which specific projects are attainable and achievable within that year. So there are a total, the implementation strategy, it has a total of 41 actions that fall under the plan, and they fall under 5 strategies that were identified within the plan. Now, that doesn't mean that there are 41 separate projects. Lots of them could happen together. We might decide that 10 years down the road, some of them don't need to be done. Perhaps they'd happen naturally on their own, and they don't need any city support in being in happening. Also, they aren't always the responsibility of the city or the city on their own to do. They can often be partnerships with other bodies. So the five strategies that the actions fall under are addressing zoning in key target areas. And that is one of the first areas that staff will often work on once a new plan has been adopted. The reason for that is because once you have zoning in place, you can ensure that any development or redevelopment will be working towards the vision of the plan. And one of the projects that we do have underway is the rezoning of Target Area 1, and we do have the consultant who's working on that with us here today, and they will be speaking once I'm finished. The second one, again, that goes together with the first one, is to extend the stationary to the west side of I-35. So Target Area 1 is on the west side of I-35, and we're working right now with Gensler on that project. The third is to create a visually enticing corridor. The fourth is to green the corridor, and the fifth is to connect both sides of the corridor. So the 3 projects that we've undertaken have already worked to achieving those strategies. So the I-35 enhancements, which will aid in connecting the corridor as well as beautifying the corridor. the establishment of TIF 4, which will help to fund a lot of the projects within the implementation plan, and then the rezoning of Target Area 1, which is currently underway. So I'll talk a little bit about each of these projects before I hand it over to Gensler for them to talk about the I-35 rezone, the Target Area 1 rezoning. So the I-35 enhancement, some of you may have also heard of this project referred to as the Betterments project. It actually happened in conjunction with the development of the I-35 corridor vision study, and that was just due to TxDOT timing. We had a once in a generation opportunity to beautify the Valley View Lane and the Valwood Parkway intersections with the phase 2 widening of I-35. That we were able to work with a task force that the mayor established, as well as with consultants, to come up with a redesigned intersection for both intersections. The goal of these intersections, I would say, are twofold. Were to create aesthetically pleasing entrances into the city. These are Valley View Lane is close to the southern boundary of the city, whereas Valwood Parkway is close to the northern boundary of the city. So it was important to establish these gateways and to make them aesthetically pleasing to people who are driving through the community or visiting the community. And the second was to improve the safety and enjoyment of pedestrian usage through these intersections. So what the enhancements do include is at the top of the image, you can see an abutment wall graphic, which will be at both intersections and fits in with the branding of the city. Also enhanced pavers, including brick stamp concrete and color concrete and stamping of the concrete with a leaf pattern. Pedestrian safety wall at both intersections, improved pedestrian lighting. In addition to that, we've decreased the crossing lengths for pedestrians by removing the pedestrian refuge island and the free right turn at both intersections. And also I should note that this project wouldn't have been able to be funded at both intersections without the participation of COG. So they did help fund these enhancements for the city at both and allowed them to be undertaken at both intersections. This project the city has entered into an advanced funding agreement, and it's currently in the detailed design phase with TxDOT. I'm sure you've noticed there's already some construction happening along the I-35 corridor, and it should be completed in 2026. So that's already well in the works. So TIF 4, so this TIF was established by council in 2021. As you can see on the map on the screen, it's represented by the yellow boundary, and the red boundary is the I-35 corridor vision study boundary. They don't match up exactly. Council did elect to include the Valwood residential neighborhood because it could benefit from some reinvestment as well. And you'll also note that the station area isn't included in the boundary. That's because the station area is covered by another TIF, and you can't have TIFs with overlapping boundaries. The TIF is projected to operate over 25 years. During that time, it should amass approximately $20 million in today's buying power. If Dallas County does decide to participate, my understanding is they haven't decided as of yet, that would increase the amount of funds available for projects within the corridor. Money should start flowing into the TIF at the end of this year and beginning of next year, but there will be some time before we really can have a critical mass of funds to start undertaking projects. But that will occur over time. Earlier this year, council did adopt a project plan for the TIF, and that is required by any TIF to direct where the funds should be directed. And there are three main categories for spending within the TIF area, and that's for land assembly, for infrastructure improvements, and for walkability, access to transit, and sustainability. And then the last project that I'll talk about is, like I said, it's currently underway. It's in phase 1, and I'll be passing the baton over to Gensler in a couple minutes to talk about, so they can talk about where they are in the project right now. But this was one of the main priorities recommended by our consultants who worked on the I-35 corridor vision study that we tackle first. And this area was viewed as being a work-centered counterpart to the station area on the east side of I-35. So they should be complementary. And for that reason, when we put this project out for an RFP, we decided to expand PD 86, or the station area code, to this side of I-35. That allows the two areas. It allows us to ensure that they will be complementary, and it also allowed us to take care of some administrative updates we wanted to make to the station area code. Like I said, we are still at the beginning stages of this project. Gensler has done a fair bit of research to date, but I'll leave it to them to go into more details on the project. And just one last thing before I finish up is the next steps, or I should perhaps say sort of the next projects that staff is looking to work on from that implementation plan. Those are the rezonings of target areas 2 and 4 and the rezoning of target area 3. I have separated them out because the rezonings of target areas 2 and 4 are really quite simple. We will probably open up the PD that those areas are contained within and make some small changes to it in terms of land uses that are allowed, and perhaps some other small tweaks, but they won't be wholesale changes to the PD. Target area 3 will take a little bit more work. It's viewed as being a future makerspace or a craftsman area with some mixed use within it. So that may take a little bit more time and effort. And as I said, the reason we're earlier in my presentation, we will work on those first because it is getting the right zoning in place really does lay a foundation for the other projects and the next steps within the implementation plan. So with that, I'll hand it over to Kim and the Gensler team to walk you through what they are working on, what we're working on with them right now. And I am available for any questions that you guys might have, but I would suggest that we leave them for the end.
Thank you, Kira.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kira. Definitely framed us up well.
You did share it. Oh, okay.
Okay, perfect. All right. All right, good afternoon. Oh, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm Kim Dresner. I'm with Gensler. I'll be the project manager for this project. I sit in the Mixed Use and Cities and Urban Design Studio. Barry Hand got a pass today. He's the principal in charge. He's taking reprieve from the heat in Alaska, so I gave him a pass.
Let's hope it's cool up there.
Yes. Go ahead.
I'm Harris Rutherford, principal at Catalyst Urban, and we're happy to be here assisting in areas of urban design and market analysis.
So Kira gave us a great overview of what the PD 86 task is for us. But just to give you a quick overview of the timeline, we've already gone through the kickoff where we did some listening and learning, and now we're in the reconnaissance phase where we're starting to ideate. Part of this task is we're going to be meeting with some of the landowners in the target area 1 as well as the station area, just to get a little bit of feedback. And we're planning on doing that in August once we all take our vacations and get back. And then after that, we'll move into the code development where we'll refine and define and refine, and then finally moving into adoption. So to give you a little bit of an overview, again, Kira framed us up well, but this is the existing station area where we're just going to be making some minor edits to the existing code. And then over here is target area 1, where we're going to be expanding. So looking at the I-35 corridor study, I pulled this right out of the document that you all adopted about 1.5 years ago. This looks at some of the constraints. And this is obviously a very truck-heavy area. I'm sure you all are very aware of that. Multiple owners, will take a long time to assemble, high traffic along 35, not great pedestrian connectivity. But there's definitely some opportunities to create some great spaces, creating a great front door to I-35. Again, you've got a great front door on the east side of 35 with your station, but how can we expand that to the west side and really make a great presence on I-35 and to the greater DFW area? I threw in some pictures just to get your brain in the area. As you can see, it's definitely very industrial, truck-heavy, wide roads. We've got, let's see if I can pop this back down, but some motels along I-35. So not necessarily the most ideal pedestrian front door that you want to have. Thank you. So last week we met with staff and had a quick vision session, and we went over some current perceptions. So we'd be interested to hear what you all have to say too, but some of the things that came out of that were, you know, old dated buildings not taken care of, neglect. Every exit on I-35 looks like this. When one of the staff members mentioned that a citizen said this would be a great metal recycling plant. So not great economic development front door that you really want. So mostly kind of dismal, but there's great opportunity. So again, this is the station area where we'll just be making some minor code updates. And then out here, over here on the left is the target area 1. Now in our discussions, we talked about the BNSF Railroad. COG has done a study that's been published that looks at connecting Frisco to Irving along this rail corridor. And in that study, they are suggesting a stop right here on Valley View. So that kind of got our juices flowing in our discussion of, is this target area 1 large enough? And I'm sure Paris can add to this conversation about potentially expanding this to make this a more viable place. In order to create enough catalyst or momentum, we really are thinking that maybe we want to broaden the boundary to ensure that this place is a successful place, that if the rail does come in, you're set up to be a great TOD location. At the conclusion of the vision session that we had with staff last week, we asked for aspirations and headlines. This is kind of a fun exercise that we do just to get people to think about what they want this place to be in 10, 15, 20 years. And some of these are great. Busy new TOD and DFW, a great spot to be. Farmers Branch has a curated, edgy, handcrafted, hospitable employment district on I-35. Farmers Branch has developed the gateway to the city via a park. So some really great aspirations. And we plan to take these and roll them into to our recommendations in the expansion for the target area 1 as we move forward with developing that code. So really we wanted to get some of your feedback on what you see for this area, target area 1, or even if you have any thoughts as they relate to the existing station area. So.
And I would add a little bit, it's interesting to me that we're in the center of the Metroplex, the geographic center here, and yet you wouldn't know that as you go along 35. A lot of the development is older, it's fragmented, it doesn't necessarily reflect the level of quality and standard that you all have set elsewhere in the city, and there's reasons why that is. But as a major gateway, one of 2 off of the international corridor, which is 35, I don't think it probably reflects your desired front door. And certainly we saw that in the overall plan, and I think the recommendations at a very high level are good recommendations. This is getting into implementation of what it could be. So I think that's why the size of what's happening on both sides of the highway is important. You know, what's currently target area 1 is fine, we can focus on that, but the fact that it doesn't touch the other rail, where it has been identified in a long-range plan, didn't make a lot of sense to us, so we brought that up. And then secondly, if you look at redevelopment and the requirements that are needed for instance, assembly, it doesn't matter what kind of development comes in there, the size of the properties just isn't very large to allow, in the study area as currently defined over there, to allow real reinvestment to occur, other than what's already on the ground. So that was another consideration that we had in looking at that. But as Kim mentioned, I mean, the focus here is to really look in at the code, the existing language, make some recommendations based on input as to how that language could be tweaked, and then further the vision on the west side of 35 so that we could understand what that actually could be. We have prepared in this process, some basic understandings of what the market could hold from a trade area standpoint, to the gentleman's comment earlier in the last presentation. We have that if you want to get into that as well. We have that after these slides, but at this point, I'd love to just open it up and hear what your thoughts are about one of these major 2 entrances into your community up 35.
Any questions?
When are y'all planning to speak to the landowners in this area? And what's, you know, with those discussions, what is your goal? Because it is such a segmented, and there's such tiny parcels. I can see where the struggle would be that, yes, we have this great vision, but how do we implement that when everything is so piecemealed?
Yeah, so we are scoped to do 2 encounters, but with like 3 different groups. So twice with 3 groups, so six meetings total. The first one would just be kind of the getting feedback, hearing what they have to say, and our plan for that is mid-August. When we all are back we are simultaneously back-to-back going on vacation. So once all 3 of us are back, we'll be doing that. And then the second touch point will be after we've kind of worked through things, we're gonna kind of present what we've come up with to share with them to get their feedback. But go ahead.
So there's key property owners, there's key tenants, and then there's general community folks that have specific interests. Like I think you all are talking to a development company right now, for instance. They would be a natural group to entertain ideas and discussion with, and look at specifically their plan that they have, and if there are even ways that can be even made better. I think over on the west side, the property owners are very important there. The reality is, as mentioned, it's fragmented, and it's hard to imagine that there wouldn't be land assembly over time. If you want to see the use and the format of the buildings change, it's hard to imagine there wouldn't be assembly. Well, that assembly only occurs if property owners are interested in that. So for them to, it's kind of a win-win. If they want to either be involved or be a part of that kind of transformational change, then what happens is it's an opportunity for them to make money. It's an opportunity for folks coming in to make money. And the important thing for the city and the community is, well, that's great, you can make money. At what? What's the vision here? What's the front door? And I think that's what this effort is helping to define, is what's the desire for the entrance into the city and a park.
So as you're having discussions with some of the different businesses in the area, you know, what happens in a situation where a business doesn't want to move? Like they're like, we're happy with the way things are.
Sure, so it's one of 2 things, because we're in the great state of Texas. They either don't move or they move. And if they move, it's because they've been acquired. That's really the only two paths. There are times when a city may be involved in kind of brokering conversations to try and help people see that they may have another location in the community that they could move to. I've seen cities in our state do that. I've seen cities in our state provide an opportunity for them to move elsewhere within the community. And there's plenty of examples where there may be a great vision, but they have all of their investment in their current, property, if they own the property. And they're fine just operating as they are, and you plan around them. And that's just how it is. But we're not in Wisconsin or somewhere where, suddenly, properties are acquired for redevelopment through a public process. It's just not the state that we're in.
We had a meeting with the prospect today, and they were kind of talking about the development around the existing station area. And they were pointing out some things that were not as current as some things around it. And I think Allison pointed out, it's kind of like Bishop Arts District. I mean, it's starting to happen. You can see some assets along Valley View that probably aren't our best, but you're seeing right behind them high-end townhomes. And it eventually starts transitioning, and there's a way for those uses to all kind of blend in.
So that's what's interesting, and Kara mentioned it earlier, I think, the overall 35 corridor study for this specific area identified it as being the work-centric kind of complement to the station area, which means, I would think, means it's more heavy on employment than it is on residential, say. And what's intriguing about that is when that study was done, think about where we were with COVID. I think we lead the nation right now in terms of people that are actually going to work in buildings, and we just broke 50%, and we lead the nation. So that says something about where we're headed in employment. And I think so any kind of a high-level strategy that's focused on employment needs to understand, well, what do employees want? What are the amenities that they're looking for? We certainly don't have most of them over in Target Area 1 right now. So that's something that we're looking at, is what would need to be in place for people to feel comfortable going to work there in the first place, and what kind of work could that be? I think those are key questions, because I suspect that the vision through, as we have conversations with folks that own land or operate businesses over there, I suspect that high-level vision might evolve a little bit based on just the paradigm of where we are today.
Paris, did you ask Kim to call the expansion of Target Area 1 a catalyst, or? No, but I'm joking. I would be supportive of actually taking Target Area 1 in the west side down to Spring Lake, up to the railroad tracks, and then up to Havenhurst, and encompassing that whole area. It's just so, it's more of that targeted approach like you were talking about, but really helps, in my opinion, build a little bit more mass and allows you to do a few extra creative things that can really hope spur some of the area, because I think there's some other opportunities over there that currently exist that might not exist closer to the freeway. And so,
Right, what's the cost associated?
There's not a drawback in my opinion. Yeah, it feels disjointed over there. It feels disconnected, and by having a little more critical mass of land area, it helps us in the planning to think about how, at least in the public realm, things can connect a little bit better. And then hopefully it spurs some of the folks that own land over there to think about it differently. There are people that own property there that it's one property of many they have all over the state, in some instances the country. This doesn't show up in an intimate way for them. It's one item on a balance sheet that they've got. So sometimes you have to start to paint the vision a little bit more for them to get their thinking going as to what actual value they have or what it could be. I think that's what we're interested in here.
We have some second and third generation companies here that families have owned, and it's the third generation now operating those businesses, and wonderful businesses that offer a huge amount of good service to Farmers Branch residents. And I would hope that they do find a place to relocate and stay within here. They're not owned by a big entity.
Yeah, just for clarity, those are absolutely fundamental, terrific uses. And no one is saying here that anyone has to leave the area. Not saying that. I think the point is, when you look at some of the vacant land that's north of Valley View, that's ripe for redevelopment. The challenge right now is some of the parcels aren't big enough for anything to go on there other than what used to be there. So where it's not targeting existing businesses that are great and are kind of great stewards of their own communities to somehow leave. That's not what the effort is. It's to look at what's holding this place back. And what's holding it back is an old, outdated suburban pattern of older buildings and vacant properties, some of which aren't even being used, and seeing how that can evolve into the future. So my hope is companies that are third generation and they're doing great, they want to double down. They want to stay there, not only stay there, but continue to reinvest and make it an even better place for them to live as employees. And that's the goal here, is to not see anchors of the community to go elsewhere. Yeah.
I think additionally, and this is more long-term, just knowing some of the plans, that rail corridor and what it means in terms of the DART network is eventually a corridor that would connect to downtown Irving through Las Colinas, but also connect up to Legacy West in Plano and into potentially Frisco in the north. And so, you know, is that a second and more expansive use of like the TOD from both sides?
Yeah.
I would agree. You know, it's interesting in here, and we heard this in the last meeting that we had, and it's certainly our own interpretation of things, is that when you come over, if you're going north and you go through the regional interchange, a lot of times there's a lot of traffic here, and that's really what you focus on. And if we're coming home, it's great, because you fly off on the exit for Valley View and you want to get off there as quickly as you can. But for most people driving through, the identity of your front door is about traffic. And then when you start looking away, because you want some visual relief, you see a lot of old buildings, you see utility lines, you see a lot of pavement, you don't see a park, you don't see greenery. I mean, you see it over on the east side if you're lucky enough when you're just coming over the interchange. So I think there's some ripe opportunities to start to change perception a little bit, and it won't take a lot. And it's a combination of what you all control in the right-of-way, and then some redevelopment in some key areas, and you're in a much better position than you are today with that happening. I don't think it takes a lot, actually. But so it's good that you all have engaged in this process to focus on it, because it doesn't look like an area of focus right now.
So jumping something real specific, so what about the hotel there? Do you have to wait till that sells and maybe they want to, I mean, it sells and resells all the time.
Well, so in the context or in a situation where you've got an asset on the ground that really has no context, which is what that is, then they're just writing it as best as they can, right or wrong. And so what we've seen in places like Bishop Arts and other environments that we've worked on around the country, if you don't start to show the property owners what could be, or also importantly, developers and new investors that might come in to kind of take advantage of and hold on to that vision to make a change, then the property owner doesn't see any other alternatives. So it's like the folks that, you know, there may be a retail center, they lose the grocery anchor, it cycles down. It's great that a church moved into the grocery anchor, but that changes the dynamics of the co-tenancy that's around it. And then maybe that then cycles into something else. Well, the folks that are owning the center, they're just trying to hold on and ride cash flow as best as they can. Well, in this situation, the owner of the motel may not have any other better ideas. So the hope here is to show them that there is something here that you could do. That maybe it's not even a hotel anymore. Maybe it and the property next door are a symbol for something else. And I think that's the vision part of this effort. You know, what's tricky here is the end result is a change to code that's helping in rezoning. And, you know, we're big believers that you have to have a pretty clear understanding of what it should be before you write code. So the first part of this effort is trying to figure that out.
Has anybody thought about encouraging a restaurant district similar to that south on I-35 where it splits into Loop 12, where you have kind of a destination restaurants and other things, you know, along the lines of Bishop Arts and that other restaurant area?
Yeah, we have thought about that. One of the great things about being in DFW, but the double-edged sword to it, is that the area, if you look like traditionally at the demographics, we're over-retailed. So if we did a pure retail study on this, and we have, there appears to not be any opportunity for retail and restaurant uses. We know that's not true, but it puts an even further emphasis on vision. So restaurants, if you went out today that said we're going to get the equivalent of another Starbucks, and say that they may come in with a large amount of incentives to write down their risk of operations, but it's probably not going to be something that on its own happens. So I think it has to do with creating a different context and why someone would want to come and operate there when all the data right now makes it seem like they wouldn't be successful. And I think that's important, is kind of the vision behind that. So early days of Bishop Arts, a guy named Jim Lake and others came in and focused on, hey, we have cool buildings there, it's unique, it's walkable, we have some streetscape, this is different than what you can get up the 35 corridor. Let's really kind of curate this and tinker with it and have the right key conversations with chefs, and they brought them in, and over a 15-year period, it's different today than it was. Back then, if you'd done a market analysis, probably wouldn't have been a lot of demand.
I'm in support of the expansion at the moment, and as you mentioned, other cities have worked with some of these tenants to help find a suitable location for these businesses, so that way we're not just kicking them out or making them feel like they need to leave. And you mentioned there's going to be some meetings with some of the individuals in that area. Is it possible that I might be able to attend one of them just to kind of see
Please do.
what they're like and hear some of the feedback?
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay. And then I had another question. Are we opening this meeting up for residents to comment?
No. So you got away with one, Mike. That's okay.
Okay.
No, sorry.
You're good.
No, I know,
Quick question. This study versus what we saw earlier, two studies, and just I'm thinking specifically the concept of complete streets. You know, Valley View is like, it seems to be a prime opportunity for that. Where is that gonna come out of? Could it potentially come out of this study saying, hey, we think you should redesign Valley View to be more of a complete street, or is that gonna be coming out of the visioning study? Or-
That was part of our project that we've already passed, that we did along with, TechStop.
So that's completely separate, how you might redo
Well,
Valley, how you might do.
it's not separate, it is supported by our vision for the I-35 corridor. So, but it's, once you get to funding, then that becomes.
It's a small section of Valley View, she's saying, but you're saying like
He's
all
talking
of Valley
about-
View,
Yeah,
or
yeah,
Dennis
yeah.
Drive,
All
that would be
right.
something that
Yeah.
the comp
Like,
plan
yeah, how do they
addresses
sort of-
down the road. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Now,
That's
in
right.
target
That's what I
area
would
one
like.
on the other side of the highway, I feel fairly confident that from a high-level visioning perspective, we will have some opinions after having discussions with folks on the ground and then adding in our own experience on things. I feel fairly confident that we're gonna have some suggestions about what Valley View might be, if it's a little bit different than what's on the east side, or maybe they're the same. You know, the reality is the city can only control what it owns, which is the right of way. So if part of this is to kickstart a new series of investments, then you would want to look at what the city owns and see where there may be ways to induce that interest. Well, you don't own a lot of property over there, so you own the rights of way, Valley View being the most important of those. So it's hard to imagine that we won't have some suggestions on that. But specifically, our task is to get in and look at high-level vision and then have some code that expands the station area over there in a way that's complementary, so that you've got one kind of zoning district, if you will, that folks can look at when they're looking to come into this area on the big regional map.
If I could add as well, I'm not too sure if I heard everything the gentleman was saying in the back, but if you were talking about the design of Valley View on the west side of I-35, the I-35 corridor vision study also did make a fair number of recommendations for that stretch of road to really, again, similar with the I-35 enhancements, improve the pedestrian walkability and also the feeling on the road, making it feeling more welcome. I believe, this is off the top of my head, but the road would lose a lane from either direction of traffic in order to accommodate, I think, a widened median and widened sidewalks as well.
I had a question. When was the study done? When was it completed?
Which study?
The one that they're talking about for the corridor, east and west.
I can answer that. This is Shrupa Sen, Deputy Director of Planning. And let me take this moment to introduce Sabrina Martin. She's our newly appointed P&Z Alternate Commissioner number 2. And this is actually her first meeting. So we were going to introduce her during our regular P&Z meeting. But thank you so much for making time for this joint meeting as well. To answer your question, the study they're talking about is the I-35 Corridor Vision Study that was adopted by Council early 2021. So the study, as I was mentioning, was almost done during the pandemic year. And if you go to our website, the Planning Department website, the study document is also posted there if you want to get familiar with the document, and also go through the website and kind of see what the phases were, how the public input was taken care of during the pandemic for this study. Was I able to answer your question?
Yes, I was just trying to get an idea of when the study was done, or not so much as adopted, but when it was actually completed. completed?
So if it was adopted in 2021, I would say for the year before. So it started, the kickoff was December of 2019. So
Yeah.
officially it started kind of January of the following year. So it took about a year.
That's what I need to know, thank you.
And what an amazing year or two that's been.
I'm trying to go back, and I'm not sure who I direct the question to, but on the Valley View improvements, and then she said it was about talking about the road diet going down and all that, so maybe that's on the east side. So is there a plan that's approved and it's just waiting on funding, or is it in sections, or is, you know, so?
For Valley View?
Yeah,
She is the microphone.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Commissioner
So
Barr.
the question was comprehensive plan or the 35 vision study or something separate that was before all that? And where is it?
Sorry, I don't think I got that question.
The 35 improvements with the.
For the widening?
Down, the road
Yeah, that
diet,
was-
the better sidewalks.
Heroes.
Okay, so the road diet is separate than I-35 expansion or the I-35 expansion project by TXDOT.
Comprehensive plan too.
Yes, so the betterment project that Kira mentioned with the mayor's task force, that was guided by the TXDOT expansion of I-35. And as you know, all the cities in the area, in the Metroplex, have their own beautifications along the embankments and improvements. So we got a grant from COG as well, and we became partner with COG and TXDOT and created that betterment project where we are getting not only the enhancement on the embankment walls, we are getting like stamped concrete, the images that Kira had. Better pedestrian equipments, like sidewalks, wider sidewalks, better lighting, to improve that look and feel of the interchange on both Valley View and Valwood. The second point is, of course, the comprehensive plan, which has a component of a mobility component. Any long-range comprehensive plan has a mobility component. We did provide the focus about complete streets, and I don't want to use the term road diet because that's just a component of complete streets. Complete streets is, of course, looking at it comprehensively. So that's going to be a part of the comprehensive plan study. Road diet as a project, there is no such project as of now because we haven't kick-started any kind of formal project for any road diet. The Valley View redesign, what I last heard from Shane and Mark is that they're at a certain design stage, probably 50 or 60%, with the consulting engineers. So that was going to be our pilot project. That was initiated 2 years back, I believe. So that was going to be our pilot project, just the segment of Valley View near the station area, where we are introducing on-street parking and more trees, making it a more defined pedestrian, or not pedestrian,
So
more
not
enhanced
the target
gateway.
area one, west side here, that property owners may have some input, that may change the design on that side of Valley View?
No.
So it won't necessarily be integrated?
Well, so the expansion project or the project of Valley View is on the east of 35. So that is our existing station area. And
What's west of that, there are recommendations that the TXDOT, that the 35 study made, Kara referred to those. Those are just recommendations and ideas right now. I think when we get into it and have conversations with property owners, we'll probably add to those ideas and refine them, is my guess. And understanding that that's kind of the basis of the platform that we're starting from. But in terms of funding, I don't believe that there's a project right now that is gonna fund that we know of today.
And then integrating that in so the look feels somewhat the same? Is that
Oh, yeah,
kinda-
that's gonna be important.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be important. Yeah. You know, it's, one of the beauty of being in a city is you can have a lot of things going at the same time. So you all are embarking on this comprehensive plan citywide. You just went through something kind of similar for the corridor. And so we're part of the implementation phase of that. So it may seem like we're, doing things sort of, too early or too late, depending on what your viewpoint is. But this is part of the implementation effort of that comprehensive look at 35. While you are engaging in a citywide look at identity and everything that flows underneath that. So I think that's why we're both here, so that we can hear and learn from each other along the way.
It's just that Valley View improvement seems to be central to everything we've talked about.
Absolutely.
It seems like, and it seems the most
It's the main
disjointed,
street.
at least
Yeah.
in my opinion.
I agree with you, yeah. It should not feel disjointed. It should
Right.
be a link.
Don't forget that we got TxDOT to give us an off-ramp
Yeah,
from
makes-
635
makes-
eastbound on the flyover, so you don't have to go to Valwood or down to Josie
Right.
or exit 161.
And it makes sense to wait for funding or wait for betterments for that, it's like, okay.
Well, that's gonna be done with the expansion
Yeah.
from TxDOT.
The good news, you have a lot of good things happening, so that's positive.
You say that louder.
So did you have some thoughts just from a kind of an identity standpoint? You saw some ideas that Kim put up there, and you heard Kira talk about the kind of overall idea for the target area 1, and thank you for sounds like you all are interested in expanding that out. But do you see that as a work-centric complement to the station area? Does that continue to ring true to you as a theme?
Absolutely, for sure.
Harris, on that, I know you've done or in the process of doing a market study, and it may come back to say, hey, because the work has changed, what are employers and employees looking for? And it may be, proximity to living. Just the sense that we've had is we have quite a bit of multifamily. And I think if there is some sense that it comes back saying, hey, you probably need to have some live-work component, I would just encourage townhome condo thoughts more than multifamily. Because I think we all view this as kind of the work center. And we need to drive employment, but employment has changed so much. We're trying to figure that out. We're counting on you all to help. But I think we might be a little bit disappointed if it's like, hey, instead of that, let's just do multifamily.
Yeah.
I think picking up on that, we did an excellent field trip to Fort Worth to see the near south side, all the efforts that they've done there. And they had some very innovative, and I know Kara mentioned sort of the more makerspace in that target area 4, but they did have some very innovative work uses that did incorporate some livability component as a portion of that. So just bringing that up as a place we all visited and saw, and I think there were a lot of head nods and favorable responses when we saw that area of Fort Worth and the transformation that had happened there in their near south side, leveraging very similar techniques with the TIF and the same sort of process. So I could see something like that as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think one of the differences between there and here, outside of use, because the use is great, the use went there because there was a physical form that was recognizable, which we don't have here. So what is going to be an interesting kind of Kickstarter is what uses could come in to start to build a cityscape form that those people want to be in. Because right now, if you could imagine, oh, it'd be great, we'll go into the old drafting supply business, building, and can you really imagine that today? I can imagine it if it has neighbors around it of different types of buildings that are linking that building in, then I start to imagine it. And you say, well, if I'm gonna be in the 10-story office building and I wanna set up my headquarters there, would I imagine that today if it was something beyond just a price point decision, which it probably is right now. And that's not where I think the gateway into your community should be positioned, is on like lower price point. So from that standpoint, it's what would make someone feel comfortable with making that decision to go into the one kind of main building that exists there. It's the context. So that's streetscape, it's landscaping, but it's also private development. So John, to your point about use, I hear you. It's not, put a bunch of apartments in there. It's also over the next 10-year period, what does it appear that could get done? And then if there needs to be some assistance where you can kind of prime that pump and change the market, then we can make some of those recommendations too. But to come out, what I don't hear you say is, this is gonna be great, we're gonna have Highland Park Village right there. And it's gonna be all couture, and that would be really hard to get that done. But if you have a makerspace, interesting, some mixed use, and a near south side kind of feel to it, that's within the realm of possibility. It's gonna take a lot of work.
It seems if the BNSF, if that stop comes in, that seems a fairly unique situation with stretching walkability. Like if you were right in the middle, you could walk to either station.
Yep.
How many maybe in Texas, I don't know, maybe do we know where that condition exists and maybe what they've done in other?
Well, yeah, Carrollton, you remember, has that condition,
Yeah.
Getting from the A train onto Dart. And, there
With
is
just
some-
the one right now, just the one
Right.
line. Yeah.
But it's that's one place there. You have other definitely in places like Europe where there's an older transit station, or in places, obviously in New York, and places where you have an older transit system, people make walkable connections all the time. But they do that, they will only do that if the walking is interesting. And there's things you're walking by and you're grabbing your coffee along the way. And, you know, maybe you're popping in to say hi to your friend at work or at home, whatever it might be. None of us do it if it's not that way. I don't care who you are. I mean, I'm an urbanist and I don't even do it. So it's gotta be something that's intriguing, especially if it's 107 out. Like, there's gotta be shade and other stuff. So now that station is a long way out. I mean, it's 40 years out, 30 years out.
That settles that, yeah.
Yeah, so, but planning and having a sense that you're not making a decision that keeps that from being a good outcome, 30, 40, 20, whatever. I mean, it's probably not less than 20, I'd be shocked. But, you know, you all started planning for your DART station in the 80s, you know, and you got that 15 years later, whatever the number was. So those things just take a while, but now you have it.
Okay, anybody else have any questions?
I just have just one comment on this. Just a few months ago, we had a meeting and it was just a mention of the concept of complete streets. And went into the meeting and there were 40 people there. They had heard about this and they were giving all this feedback. And then we said, well, we'll slow down. We're just now hiring a consultant. So still, I mean, even as close as I am to this, it is not clear to me which of this is doing what. Like, I mean, this idea of complete streets, does that live in the vision study? Is that in here? Is that something separate? How do all these things relate to each other? You know, maybe I don't have the history enough to have it completely in my mind, but I'm a little confused by where it all sits together.
Yes, so I think, and maybe that's on us, so my apologies if we put these two projects next to each other. Our intention was not to create confusion. We wanted these two studies to kind of see each other and talk to each other because they're both important, and you want both long-range studies or policies to kind of work in coordination. That was the only reason we put both of them on the joint meeting agenda where both council and the commission could listen. However, there are similarities and dissimilarities in both projects, Commissioner Miller, if you will, because comprehensive plan is a long-range policy document. It's not zoning. So every city has long-range plans. By state law, our zoning is guided by our long-range plan or policy. That's how zoning is founded upon. That what our future land use recommends, that's what guides zoning. However, this PD 86 expansion project, even though some of the discussions are similar in nature in terms of, okay, what is the focus for this area, what is the vision for this area, at the end of the day, it is a zoning process. It's updating the PD 86 zoning for the station area and expanding it towards the west of 35. However, we still need to talk about the vision. We still need to talk about Valley View and connectivity because that is important while drafting the zoning. But if you are if you are thinking about the complete streets discussion and all the people who are interested about that, that is the more, or not more probable, the location for that discussion is within the comprehensive plan because that's our long-range policy. Academically speaking, and Amber can vouch for that too, we used to be taught that comprehensive plans are like our Bible for the city. That guides every future policy decision. That's a long-term document, 20 years down the road, how you want your city to grow and develop, and how you get those achieved by zoning, by your CIPs, your public works improvement projects, your other more actionable project plans. So the complete streets, it's gonna be a policy recommendation by the consultant, and if that's what people want and that's what we, coming through the SSC and TSC process, recommend, that's gonna be a policy recommendation, not an actual project plan. Am I making sense? So moving forward with this overall study, you will hear more about it, but the comprehensive plan will be the one where we will mostly be talking about it.
But the good thing about this meeting and the purpose of this is one of the things we've heard right now is that we need to be thinking about this connection through Valley View and how the street can make that connection and how new development or existing development or somewhere in between can embrace that, particularly on the west side. And I think you all are already in process and having done that around the station area on the east side. And the good news is you have a master developer that you're working with, around the station area. I would imagine that they're gonna be involved as well. So we're hearing that. It'll be filtered into our thinking.
Any other questions? Okay, well then it is 5:09, and I adjourn today's work meeting.
Thank you for letting us join.
Thank you all.
So nice of y'all.